Greetings, lots of love family. How are you all doing? I am Natural Mystic and I am bouncing back. Welcome to part 4 of my sort of experience in sharing my journey with you as I regrow my edges, but also speaking to Take 2. Greetings, Locs of Love family. How are you all doing? I am Natural Mystic. Welcome to my channel. I am bouncing back. And if you get any value from these journeys and these stories that I'm sharing with you all, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Well, what we're going to talk about this week, I would say the 5 don'ts. Week 4, but we're going to talk about the 5 don'ts. I know I gave you a little bit of that last week, but this week we're just going to give you the basics, layman's terms, easy to understand, and to be honest with you, it doesn't matter where you are on your locks journey. I hope that you do find this information valuable. So first of all, when you start your locks, everyone always kind of go, how many do I want? I would say go with what suits your head. You will find that as they start to grow, they're either going to be really too thick for some hair textures, hair types, and then there are other people such as myself with such a finer hair type, I have slightly thinner locks. Now, if I had known more about the weight in regards to my locks, I probably would have started mine a lot thicker. Now, plus side of it is that there is an opportunity here to actually thicken locks. That can happen, and you can also thin them down. But I would say seek a professional. And when I say a professional, I don't just mean somebody who has grown locks themselves and says, oh yeah, let's just get the scissors and the razor and we'll just go for it. No, what you would want is somebody who's actually worked with various heads in various conditions, and actually speak to somebody who would class themselves as a loctician. Ask them as many questions as you would like. Ask them for pictures, recommendations or referrals from some of their other clients, so you can see what their work is like that before and after. So if your locks are in a position where you kind of want to, like I said, thick them up or thin them out a little bit, like I said, go to their gram pages, go to their socials, ask them for before and after pictures of heads of all conditions. Most locticians are very, very proud of their work and really like to show you the before and the after. So that's what I'll leave there. In regards to, again, retwisting. A lot of people like the very clean scalp look, you know, no loose hairs, everything's tucked away, it's all tidy. Sometimes that's for work purposes and also for cleanliness, but I'd say mainly sort of, you know, what society has kind of dictated that we conform to, even though we have our natural hair and, you know, it kind of grows the way it does naturally. I do and have found that some employers don't like the sort of messy scalp look where they can't see your scalp, but they just assume they know what looks good and perhaps maybe what isn't beneficial or healthy for your hair and your scalp. Hence why some women and men wear headscarves, headbands, wraps, hair nets, just purely to keep the roots covered, or the, you know, the scalp area covered. That may look messy to others, but to us, we just want that kind of free form, natural locking experience. Over twisting, palm rolling, not always advisable depending on how you started your locks and how you'd like to maintain your locks. Some people will find that there's an over twist where the locks will thin in certain sections, and it's not easy to sort of get those to thicken up. So I would say, however you start your journey, kind of keep that same routine without too much interference in between. Then we move on to styling. something that we all like to do. It does mean that our locks are versatile. We can show different patterns on our scalps and different twists and different techniques, and we can all, you know, do something when it gets to a certain length. Let's just keep that in mind. We can all do something occasionally when we're going to a wedding or something, and you don't, you know, especially during the summer months or the warmer weather, you don't always want your head covered. And if your locks are as long as mine, I tend to want them styled in a way that's easy for me to sleep, first of all, but, you know, I don't have to go and tamper with them. They can just rest. I have mine sewn into position rather than using pins, because I don't want anything to prong me in my head. So that's a little tip. If you decide to have your locks styled, I would suggest that the loctician uses the thread that we used to use to do the wrapping. You know, I don't know if you remember that the girls when I was at school used to have their hair threaded and wrapped into position and styled, and that's pretty much what you can do with locks as well. So you can use the locks and you can also use the threading technique to keep them in place. I believe that was 3. Okay, tip number 4, or definitely don't number 4, something which I done stupidly, is when you dye your locks or when you add some sort of colour to your locks. First of all, always do a test patch. Sometimes I wouldn't, they recommend where it can't be seen, and some people just assume that means round the back. However, if you do have a reaction, just bear in mind that there's going to be a visible part potentially of your head and a very tender section of maybe where you'll have to wrap it or cover it up or sleep on it perhaps. Clothes will rub on it. So just bear in mind that when you do your test section, sometimes it's actually easier to kind of go in to the locks a little bit, so you're not troubling the edges, not troubling the back, but sometimes just go in a few and then test one. And I would suggest testing from the end. And I'm putting my hand out here because this is how long my locks is, but for anybody else, I would say suggest testing and dyeing just a tip. Number 1, to see how long it takes. Number 2, to see if the colour result is what it is that you actually want. And then number 3, once it dries, to feel the texture of how that particular area of locks feels with the colour, because you'll find that it may lack moisture. So before you then start to sort of add more treatments or more colours, you may want to add some moisture, as in oils, to hydrate the locks, not to wet them up. Okay, so you want to keep them moisturised, not wet. Big difference. You might also then want to look at your shampoos and conditioners, and you may want to use 2 different shampoos or conditioners here. Most shampoos, or not say most, some shampoos are specifically designed to retain colour, so that would also help with your actual overall look, is, you know, in regards to what it is you're going for. And then there are other shampoos that will protect your scalp, protect your hair, and maybe not want to use them on the dyed area or the coloured area because it would start to wash it out. So just bear that in mind. Don't dye to the root. That is a sub-tip within number 4, but I think the most important one. Once you've tested the end and you've seen how your locks takes as you get closer and closer towards your scalp, I would say always leave a centimetre if you're doing something at home for the first time, and see how that looks and feels first. I know a lot of people want to dye to the roots. If you do, make sure that it's a, number 1, vegan friendly, or not tested on animals, no ammonia, and just bearing in mind that there isn't a small element of bleach in there. So imagine what bleach does to your clothes when it gets into the wrong place, for example. So bear in mind that you don't want it touching any tender parts of your skin, and you may even want to, I know it sounds strange, grease your scalp before applying any colours or any dyes towards the roots, and then just see how that goes first. Don't re-dye or over-dye and reapply too often. Some people, you know, sort of wake up on the weekend or whatever day it is and go, oh, I want my hair to be this colour today, and when it doesn't take the first time, they then kind of go back too quickly to apply more of that colour to try and enhance it. I would say definitely leave the dyeing or the colouring at least 10 days to 2 weeks apart. And that is, again, in between that time, replenishing and hydrating and actually looking after the locks themselves and your scalp before you then go back to do your second colouring. The scalp is very tender. I'm sure some of you know that, yeah, just pulling at the wrong time when it's growing, or, you know, just overstretching and all that sort of stuff, your scalp becomes really tender. And then to add a chemical or some sort of application to that can possibly, you know, create problems, not just with the hair, but with the scalp itself, you know, burning sensations, dandruff, dry, flaky, and even some instances being overly oily, which then creates residue into the locks as well. So just be really cautious. And finally, this has gone on for a bit longer than I thought, but finally, don't compare your locks to anybody else's. I've spent a lot of time doing that, kind of looking at other people's locks, going, oh, I wish I'd had it that thick, or I wish I'd done that, or I wish I'd done this. And you kind of put yourself into a position where you might start to try to manipulate your locks to look like somebody else's. And again, depends on your hair texture, the way it grows. And that is the whole point of actually growing locks. It's just to kind of let it do what it does. And the only thing we really kind of have control over is the actual size of them. We might be able to try and speed up the growth. That's okay for some, if that's what it is that you want to do. But it is about the journey. You know, your first year, your second year into it, when you realise that there are things within you that potentially feel different, you might look at the world slightly different, people might be looking at you slightly differently. That is all part of the journey. Okay, so although these were the don'ts, what I would say is to continue to embrace whatever it is your locks throw at you, or where they don't comply, or where they just want to sit to the left like mine do. No matter how much I shift them over to the right, even if I wrap it a different direction underneath, somehow it just shifts. And I find it quite funny, actually, because I tend to talk to people with my head tilted to the right to make myself look, you know, straight and balanced and normal. So thank you one and all for watching. I really do appreciate your time and energy for just giving me the comments and the feedback, and just letting me know that you're learning as I learn as well. And yeah, we are definitely into 4 week of the treatment. I did, just to finalise really, I am using a derma roller to actually stimulate my edges, and yes, I can actually feel the difference. So that is one thing that I would advise towards the end. If you are going to use any sort of mechanical device where it does have prongs or where it's sharp, just be cautious as to how hard you press it into your scalp, how often you use it, and then, you know, make sure that, again, on the back of that, although my head is tender, I know that for the next couple of days I'll just be like putting in a lot of hydration, not too much treatment in regards to like over touching it, but I'll definitely be using my tonics and basically just giving it as much air and daylight as possible. So that's it for this week, and I hope to see you all soon, and I'll be back next week with another snippet of Locs of Love. Lots of love from me. I am Natural Mystic, and together we are bouncing